There's an old abandoned house perched atop a stubby hill not too far from where I grew up. The greenish outer paint all flaked and its untended yard long since overgrown with weeds. It looms above the rest and looks down upon the surrounding modern homes littered around on all sides. A relic of a time gone past, many in the local community have always considered it an eyesore, a problem to be dealt with in order to pave the way for something new, something worthwhile. It sat empty for many years, longer than I've been alive. Remarkably enough, it seemed to be left entirely untouched by vandals. I always marveled at it as a child as we drove past. So different, decayed yet oddly beautiful among the meticulously upkept suburban residences which contrasted it in every direction. The house seemed to experience the world all on its own. As innovation brushed away the others of its kind, it alone remained, stoically defiant, refusing to give way. At least that's what I always thought as a young boy. It wasn't until much later that my dad would tell me a story about a dead family line and the bank's effort to claim the property to no success. And so it sat dormant, waiting. For what? Who's to say? Even as an adult, I've always had a niggling feeling that old houses like that, the ones that refuse to go into that dark night of deconstruction, hold some sort of strange power. Ambiguous, but they're all the same, as if somehow actively preventing their own demolition. I finally decided to get inside and take a look. Having recently driven home to visit my parents, I cruised down that same street and was somewhat shocked to see that even after the years I'd been away, the house still remained. Now, in an even more dilapidated state, its windows were still miraculously intact, caked in dust and grime to the point of opacity, but whole just the same. The entire property seemed to lean almost, having sloped in on its own rot. That same childlike curiosity overtook me as the thought crossed my mind. Nobody's been inside for centuries. Obviously, that wasn't true. That's how it felt. There's always been an ancient presence to it, something that doesn't want to quite let go. I lay awake in my old room that night after having dinner with my parents and going to bed. All those forgotten feelings of naive adventure came rushing back, and it didn't take much internal convincing to drag myself out there, quietly in the night, to that abandoned house. I snuck around behind it, wary of being caught trespassing by the neighboring residents, and found that the back door had been completely removed. It was gone, not anywhere to be seen in the long grass and weeds or the slimy wooden rear patio amongst the stray boards haphazardly cast aside around my feet. Who would steal an old door? The thought made me want to run, but I clicked on the flashlight and stepped inside anyway, covering my face in a bandana in the likely case of mold. I entered into the kitchen, completely barren besides some aged brown bowls crusted with God knows what decayed food, if it was even food at all, resting atop the counter in a scattered formation. All the furniture was gone besides a smashed antique TV set in the living room. I pulled open the door, the sound of which will haunt my nightmares, and stepped into the foyer. The front entrance was blocked by stacks of yellowed newspaper, magazines taking up half the already cramped area. I mounted the stairs, and each gave a similar alarming creak, as did the door. Ascending into the darkness, shining the light through the wooden banister, I saw 3 more doors. One down a short hallway to the right, one behind, and the other was directly in front of me. Climbing the last few stairs and pushing open the nearest revealed a small bathroom, the upper corners of which were caked in thick black mold. I quickly tried to slam the door shut, frustrated to see that it refused to close again all the way in its state of disrepair. I'm not sure if it was right then that I truly began to realize just how stupid I was for being there, in a derelict old house way past midnight, or at some other point in the following minute, but the feeling inspired a deep, dread-filled nausea which made its home in my gut and refused to leave. Backing away, spinning around, and cringing at the sounds of floorboards beneath, I opened the door now right ahead of me, revealing a large bedroom, entirely bare except for a visibly soggy mattress tossed up against the far wall. An eerie moonlight showcased the roaming particles of dust and airborne dirt drifting across the space, disturbed at my presence. Now, desperately wanting to leave, the fact took stage in my mind that I really didn't belong there. My stomach began to sink, and I started out through the door, towards the stairs. But there was one last room to see, and I couldn't just leave it at that. The hallway was short, but it seemed to stretch into infinity in the beam of the flashlight. Every rickety step sent foreboding chills down my spine, instinct attempting to force me out, but I endeavored forward until I was gripping the handle, turning it and pushing the door open. With a deafening squeak, it slowly swung before hitting off the wall with a soft thud. Before I could step inside, a frantic scurrying enveloped the space, dragging swiftly across the floor in multiple directions. But it wasn't rats. It wasn't paws or claws of cats or vermin. I heard the scraping hobble of bare human feet scattered throughout the darkness. Not just one, many. I was frozen in place until a single raspy voice broke the silence. "Who are you?" In that moment, staring into the pitch black ahead, I wasn't even sure if the words had come from my own dry throat or from inside. After the longest time, I heard steps beginning to slowly advance toward the doorway. I found my feet and stumbled backwards, breaking into a run, fleeing out the way I came in. Thankfully, I didn't hear anyone give chase behind me. Climbing back through the still open bedroom window, I collapsed into the bed, exhausted. After a while, I must have fallen asleep because I woke sometime just after dawn, still fully clothed. New sunlight cast its warm glow over the top of me, and I felt immediately relieved in the safety of a new day, thinking the whole thing very well could have been just some wild dream. That's when I noticed him, hulking, haggard, covered in dirt, hunched over by the door. "What were you doing in our house?"